An elderly mother who has dedicated her entire life to her family feels abandoned when her husband passes away and she is diagnosed with cancer. She soon realizes she is no longer important to her children, as their promises to visit her are never fulfilled, and she feels left behind. During this difficult time, she meets Sarah, a young woman also battling cancer, who takes care of her when her children do not. Touched by Sarah's care and affection, she decides to change her will, leaving all her assets to Sarah, who has stood by her through the hardest times. When her family protests and takes the matter to court, she resolutely defends her decision. In the end, she learns that she no longer needs the approval of those who abandoned her, and begins building a new life with Sarah, finding peace and happiness in this real connection. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories, and make sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Together, let's continue to support one another through the highs and lows of life. Sarah Parker had dedicated her entire life to her family. When her husband passed away, she was not only the mother and wife, but also the steady pillar of their home, always the one behind the scenes, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Everything in the house operated like clockwork, and her children had grown up with their own families to care for, always trusting that their mother would be there, solid as a rock. But now, as time passed, Sarah realized that no one needed her the way they used to. Her children began to drift away, and especially on that Christmas when she expected a warm wish from her daughter-in-law, she was met with nothing but coldness. That was when Sarah realized she was no longer a part of the family. A diagnosis of cancer came. She was scared, of course, but what scared her more was the thought of facing this alone. When she told her children, they promised to visit. They said all the right things, but promises were easy to make when you weren't facing your own mortality. Days passed, then weeks, and the visits never came. She heard excuses. I'm too busy. The kids have activities. I have work. And the silence grew louder. By the time she was admitted to the hospital for treatment, Sarah had already gotten used to the feeling of being invisible. And then she met Sophia, a young woman, no more than 20, thin and fragile, but with fire in her eyes that Sarah couldn't ignore. Sophia was also fighting cancer, but in an earlier stage. She was much younger, yet something about her instantly made Sarah feel connected. Sophia began talking to her right away, telling her how she was feeling, and she didn't treat Sarah like just another patient. She spoke to Sarah like a person, like she mattered. Sophia made Sarah laugh. It started off as a small chuckle, then grew into something real. Sarah hadn't laughed like that in what felt like forever, and she hadn't truly felt anything other than pain and disappointment until Sophia's energy, her zest for life, made its way into her heart. Sophia's constant jokes and infectious spirit made Sarah feel like she wasn't alone for the first time in months. Despite the cancer treatments and the harsh reality of their circumstances, Sophia kept things light. She helped Sarah with small tasks like fetching water or guiding her to the bathroom. It was a kindness Sarah hadn't experienced in a long time. Her children, who had been absent during her toughest moments, never came around to offer such support, and in that silence, in that absence, Sarah began to realize the truth. It wasn't just about the cancer. It was about the way her children had gradually distanced themselves from her, leaving her feeling abandoned and invisible. But Sophia, this stranger in so many ways, showed up for her in ways no one else had. She talked with Sarah for hours, listening to her regrets, her fears, and her memories of a life once filled with love and connection. As they spoke, Sarah began to feel a sense of hope return. She told Sophia about her children's absence, about her past with her husband, and about the loneliness that had slowly taken over her heart. Sophia listened intently, offering words of comfort or simply a presence that Sarah needed. Sophia shared her own story, one filled with even more pain and abandonment. She had grown up without a mother, without a father, bouncing between foster homes, never having a family of her own. Sarah understood that pain more than she expected. She had never been abandoned in the same way, but she knew what it felt like to be left behind, to not matter. Despite the differences in their lives, the two women found a bond in their shared need for connection and love, and as the days passed, Sarah's bond with Sophia grew stronger. It became clear that, despite all the years Sarah had spent raising her own children, it was Sophia, this young woman without a family, who was now the family Sarah had been searching for all along. One night, as Sarah lay awake, she realized that she couldn't keep waiting for her children to change. They hadn't shown up for her when she needed them the most, but here was Sophia, someone who had nothing, yet was giving Sarah everything. That was when Sarah made her decision. She would change her will. She would make Sophia her heir. It wasn't just about property or wealth. It was about giving someone who truly cared something real. She wanted to show Sophia how much she mattered to her, and in doing so, Sarah would be taking control of her own life for the first time in a long time. The next morning, Sarah made the call to her lawyer. She knew it would cause tension with her children, but it didn't matter. She had been through so much pain and rejection already. For the first time, she was doing something for herself. Sophia was there beside her, supporting her, when Sarah needed it most. And no matter what came next, Sarah knew she had made the right choice. The decision was made, and Sarah felt a sense of relief wash over her. It wasn't about the money or the house. It was about reclaiming her dignity, about making sure that someone who had been there for her during her darkest hours would be taken care of. She didn't know how her children would react, but she couldn't worry about that anymore. They had made their choices, just as she had made hers. The days after she made the call were filled with uncertainty. Sophia continued to care for Sarah, offering her unwavering support. Sarah felt the weight of her decision, but also the strength it gave her. For the first time, she was standing up for herself, no longer waiting for her children's approval. It felt empowering, though it came at a cost. She knew the battle with her children would be intense. They had never reacted well to anything they disagreed with, and this would be no different. Sure enough, a few days later, Sarah's eldest son, Jacob, called. His voice was cold, filled with frustration. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his words sharp. Sarah knew what was coming. She had anticipated this moment, but hearing his anger still sent a pang through her heart. "What about?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "We found out about the will. You're leaving everything to her?" Jacob's voice was incredulous. "You can't be serious. You're just going to give everything to this girl, this stranger?" The accusation stung, but Sarah stayed calm. "She's not a stranger to me," Sarah replied quietly. "She's been there for me when none of you have. She's the one who's shown up when I needed someone the most." There was a silence on the other end of the line, the kind of silence that told Sarah everything she needed to know. Her son wasn't listening. He was only thinking of what he stood to lose. "You're being manipulated," Jacob continued, his voice rising. "She's using you, Mom. You can't let her do this. We're your family, not her." The words cut deeper than he probably realized. Sarah's heart ached, not just because of the accusations, but because they revealed the truth. Her children were more concerned about their inheritance than they were about her well-being. "No, Jacob," she said, her voice steady but firm. "You've shown me what matters to you. I've given you everything, but you were never there when I needed you. Laya, on the other hand, has been there every step of the way." She could hear him trying to gather his thoughts, but Sarah didn't give him a chance to speak. "You've had your chance," Sarah continued. "You all have. But now I have to do what's right for me, and I'm not going to back down." There was a long pause before Jacob finally spoke again, his voice low and defeated. "You'll regret this, Mom. We'll take this to court. We won't let this stand." The phone call ended abruptly, leaving Sarah to sit in the quiet aftermath. It was hard not to feel a sting, but she knew she had made the right decision. For so long, she had put her family's needs above her own. But now, for the first time, she was living for herself. Sophia was by her side when the call ended, offering a quiet comfort as Sarah tried to process the conversation. "I know it's hard," Sophia said gently, "but you did what you had to do. You're not alone in this, Sarah. I'm here." Sarah felt a tear slip down her cheek, but it wasn't from sadness. It was from the overwhelming relief of knowing that she wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't alone, but the battle was far from over. Her children had already made it clear they wouldn't give up without a fight. Sarah knew they would do everything in their power to make her change her mind, to manipulate her into reconsidering, but this time she wouldn't be swayed. The next few days were filled with tense anticipation as Sarah prepared for the inevitable court battle. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she also knew it was the only path forward. Her children had already shown her who they were. They had abandoned her when she needed them most. It was time for Sarah to stand her ground, and through it all, Sophia remained by her side, helping her in ways no one else had. When Sarah felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, Sophia's presence reminded her that she was stronger than she thought. As the days passed, the tension in the air became almost unbearable. Sarah's phone rang incessantly, each call a reminder that the battle had only just begun. Her children, particularly Jacob, had made it clear that they would stop at nothing to contest the will. They couldn't understand why she would leave everything to a stranger, someone who wasn't family in their eyes. But to Sarah, Leah was the only family who had been there for her when she needed them most. The day of the hearing arrived faster than Sarah expected. She woke up early, her heart racing with a mix of fear and determination. The sun was rising, casting a golden hue over the room. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of clarity. She had made her choice, and she wasn't going to let anything or anyone take that from her. Sophia was already awake when Sarah entered the kitchen. "You ready for this?" Sophia asked, her voice full of concern, but also strength. Sarah nodded, taking a deep breath. "I don't know if anyone can ever truly be ready for something like this, but I have to do it. It's my choice, my life, and I won't let them control it anymore." Sophia smiled softly, giving Sarah's hand a reassuring squeeze. "I'm with you, no matter what happens today." They drove to the courthouse together, the silence between them comfortable but heavy. Sarah was preparing herself for whatever came next. She couldn't control how her children would react, but she could control how she responded. She wasn't going to back down. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Sarah could feel the eyes of her children on her, each one filled with anger, disappointment, and resentment. They were seated on the opposite side, their faces hard, their posture rigid. Sarah couldn't bring herself to meet their gaze. She had spent years trying to please them, always putting their needs before her own. But not anymore. Her lawyer spoke first, outlining the facts of the case, the will she had written, and the reasons for leaving everything to Leah. He emphasized that Sarah had every right to make her own decisions, to leave her estate to whoever she chose. And then it was Jacob's turn. His voice was tight with fury as he stood up, the words spilling out in a rush. "Your Honor, this is absurd. My mother is being manipulated by this girl. She's taking advantage of her illness. She's not in her right mind." Sarah felt the sting of his words, but she didn't flinch. She had expected this. She had prepared for it. She glanced at Leah, who was sitting beside her, her face calm and supportive. Leah squeezed Sarah's hand, offering her silent strength. "I'm not manipulating anyone," Leah said, standing up to address the court. "I care about Sarah. I've been here for her in ways that no one else has. She made this decision on her own, and I have no interest in her money. I just want her to be happy and at peace. She chose me because I was the only one who cared for her when her own children couldn't be bothered." Sarah's heart swelled with gratitude. Leah's words were simple but powerful. For the first time in so long, she felt seen, truly seen, by someone who didn't want anything from her. Jacob was livid. "This is a joke," he yelled, his face flushed with anger. "You're giving everything to a stranger, Mom? What about us? We're your children. We've been there for you." Sarah took a deep breath, standing up slowly. She could feel her children's eyes on her, their anger palpable, but she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. "No, you haven't," she said quietly, her voice steady. "You've been absent. When I needed you, you were nowhere to be found. Leah was there for me when none of you were. She showed me what real love and care look like, and that's why I made this decision. It's my choice, not yours." The courtroom was silent, the weight of Sarah's words hanging in the air. For the first time in her life, she wasn't asking for anyone's approval. She had made her decision, and she wasn't going to apologize for it. The judge listened attentively, nodding as Sarah spoke. "I understand your wishes, Mrs. Matthews," he said, turning to Sarah. "This is a difficult case, and it's clear that your relationship with your children has been strained, but it's also clear that you have the right to decide who you want to leave your estate to. I will take everything into consideration before making my ruling." The hearing ended shortly after that, and the room began to empty. Sarah didn't look at her children as they left. She didn't need to. She had made her choice, and whatever happened next, she would face it with dignity. The following days were filled with a mixture of emotions. The waiting was the hardest part. Sarah continued her treatments, but now, more than ever, she felt the weight of her decision. Her children had made it clear they wouldn't back down easily, but she wasn't going to change her mind. Sophia remained by her side, offering her comfort and companionship. She could see how much Sarah was struggling, but she also saw the strength growing within her. Sarah had done something for herself, for the first time in years, and that was something worth fighting for. As the days dragged on, Sarah felt a strange sense of peace settle within her. The legal battle with her children was far from over, but the decision had been made. It was her choice. It was her life. She would no longer live in the shadow of the family she had tried so hard to hold together. She had been fighting for their love, for their acceptance, but now she knew that the only love she truly needed was the one she could give herself. The calls from her children kept coming, each one more insistent than the last. They begged, they pleaded, they accused her of making a grave mistake. Mike, the eldest, called frequently, his voice dripping with frustration and anger. Sarah listened to the venom in his words, but she remained calm. She didn't have to explain herself to him anymore. She had been there for them all her life, and when she needed them, they were nowhere to be found. Then came the knock on her door. It was late in the afternoon, just as the light was beginning to fade, and Sarah wasn't expecting anyone. Her heart skipped a beat when she opened it and saw her son Jacob standing there, his face pale, his posture rigid with tension. It was the first time he had come to her since the court ruling. "Mom," he said, his voice low, almost apologetic. "Can we talk?" For a moment, Sarah didn't know how to react. She hadn't seen him since the hearing, and she certainly hadn't expected him to come to her now, after everything that had happened. But she stepped aside and let him in. There was no point in turning him away. Not now, not when he was finally asking for something. They sat down in the living room, the silence between them heavy. Sarah's pulse quickened, unsure of what to expect. Would he yell at her? Would he demand she change the will? Would he finally admit he was wrong? "I'm not here to fight," Jacob began, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know how to say this. I've been thinking a lot, and I know I can't change what's been done, but I need you to know, I'm sorry, Mom, for everything." The words hit Sarah like a wave, and for a moment she couldn't speak. It wasn't the apology she had wanted, not the one she had dreamed of all these years, but it was an apology nonetheless. "I should have been there for you," Jacob continued, his voice breaking slightly. "I shouldn't have abandoned you the way I did. I can't undo that, and I know it's too late for that, but I'm sorry. I should have been better. You deserved better than what I gave you." Sarah sat in stunned silence, the reality of what he was saying washing over her. It wasn't the perfect apology. It wasn't the closure she had always wanted, but it was real. "I don't expect forgiveness, Mom," Jacob said, his voice full of raw emotion. "I just needed you to know that. And I need you to understand that I'm not just angry at you. I'm angry at myself. I've been angry at myself for a long time now." Sarah's heart softened, but her resolve didn't falter. She had been waiting for this moment for so long, but now that it had come, she didn't feel the relief she thought she would. What did it really mean? What would change if she forgave him? Did she want to go back to the way things were before? Could she? "I've spent so many years waiting for an apology," Sarah said quietly, her voice steady. "But the truth is, I've been waiting for something that wasn't going to come, and now, even though you're sorry, I can't go back. I can't undo the hurt." Jacob nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I understand, Mom. He paused, swallowing hard. "I just want you to know that I love you. Even if you can't forgive me, I love you. And I'm sorry it took me so long to say that." Sarah felt something shift inside her, but the ache still remained. She could hear the sincerity in his voice, see the pain in his eyes. But the truth was, the wounds ran deep, and they couldn't be healed with a few words, no matter how heartfelt. "Thank you, Jacob," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "But I can't fix everything. I've tried for so long, and now I have to live for me." He stood, his expression torn. "I get it, Mom. I really do. But I just wanted you to know, before it's too late, that I'm sorry. I don't know if that will ever make up for the way I treated you, but I'm sorry." He walked to the door, but before he left, he turned back to face her one last time. "I'll always love you, Mom, even if I don't deserve it." With that, Jacob left. Sarah closed the door behind him and leaned against it, her heart heavy. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to grieve for the family she had lost. She had spent so many years fighting for their love, for their approval, but now she was finally learning to fight for herself. The next few days passed in a blur. Sarah continued her treatment, focusing on her health, but her mind often drifted to what had transpired with Jacob. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that she had made the right decision. She had chosen Laya. She had chosen herself. Laya, of course, was there every step of the way. She helped Sarah with her treatments, her care, her meals. She never once made Sarah feel like a burden. She was patient and kind, always there when Sarah needed her. She didn't have to be, but she was. And Sarah was beginning to realize just how much Laya meant to her. Laya had become her family, not by blood, but by choice. And for the first time in years, Sarah felt like she wasn't invisible. She was seen. She was loved. The battle with her children was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, Sarah knew she was doing what was right for her. She was no longer the woman who had always put others first, always sacrificed herself. She was reclaiming her life. The days that followed were a delicate balance of reflection and decision-making. Sarah knew that her children would not give up easily. Her choice to leave everything to Laya, the young woman who had shown her more love and care than her own flesh and blood, was something they would never accept without a fight. But Sarah had come to understand something crucial. This wasn't just about money or inheritance. This was about respect, dignity, and, most importantly, reclaiming her own life. As the weeks passed, Sarah's health fluctuated. Some days were better than others. There were moments of strength when she felt like she could face anything, and there were moments of exhaustion when the weight of her choices felt too heavy. But through it all, Laya was there, a steady presence that Sarah could lean on. Laya didn't just care for her. She listened. She didn't just assist her. She genuinely saw her. And that was the part that Sarah had been missing all along, someone who saw her not for what she could give, but for who she was. Laya's unwavering support was the anchor Sarah needed in the storm of her emotions. One day, as Sarah sat by the window, watching the world pass by, she felt a surge of clarity. The battle with her children wasn't about winning or losing. It was about setting boundaries. It was about choosing peace over guilt, freedom over obligation. She had given her children everything, but they had failed her when she needed them most. Now, for the first time in years, she was choosing herself. But even as she made peace with her decision, doubts still crept in. The family she had once known was gone. Her children had chosen their path, and she had chosen hers. But there was still a part of Sarah that longed for the relationships she had tried so hard to preserve. She had always believed that family was everything. But now, she was learning that sometimes family wasn't about blood, it was about who shows up for you when it matters most. One afternoon, after a long day of treatment, Sarah found herself sitting outside, the sun dipping low in the sky. The air was crisp, and the world felt unusually still. Leah sat beside her, quietly watching the sunset. "You know, Martha," Leah said softly, breaking the silence, "you've given so much to your family, but now it's time to give to yourself. You don't have to carry all that weight alone anymore." Sarah nodded, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. "I've spent so many years waiting for them to see me, to appreciate me, but now I realize if they didn't see me then, they never will." Leah smiled, her eyes full of understanding. "And now you're finally seeing yourself, aren't you?" For the first time, Sarah felt the truth of those words deep within her. She had spent her entire life fighting to be seen by others, but now she was learning to see herself. She was letting go of the expectations that had been placed upon her and embracing the woman she was becoming. Days passed, and the court battle loomed large in the distance. But Sarah was no longer consumed by it. She knew what was at stake, but she had already made her peace. She had made the choice that felt right to her, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that from her. One evening, as the darkness began to settle in, Sarah received a call. It was her lawyer. "Mrs. Johnson," the lawyer began, his tone more formal than usual, "your children are pushing forward with the case. They're not giving up." Sarah sighed, feeling a weight settle in her chest. "I know," she said quietly, "but I've made my decision. I'm not going back on it." "I understand," the lawyer replied. "We'll do everything we can on our end, but be prepared. This could get ugly." Sarah glanced over at Leah, who was sitting by the window, her profile bathed in the soft glow of the fading sunlight. For a moment, Sarah felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She wasn't alone anymore. "I'm ready," Sarah said, her voice steady. "I've been ready for a long time." That evening, as Sarah lay in bed, the sounds of the night settling around her, she thought about the future. The decision she had made was irreversible. She had chosen Leah, and she had chosen herself. But deep down, Sarah knew this wasn't just about the inheritance. This was about redefining what family meant, about embracing the relationships that truly mattered. In the days ahead, she would face her children again, but she was no longer afraid. She was no longer the invisible woman she had once been. She was the woman who had found her strength, her voice, and her peace. The days that followed were filled with preparations for the legal battle that was sure to come. But Sarah didn't let it consume her. Instead, she focused on her health, on the quiet moments with Leah, on the things that truly mattered. She had learned that it wasn't about winning the fight. It was about knowing that she had made the right decision for herself. And when the day came for the final hearing, Sarah walked into the courtroom with her head held high. She had already won, not because of the outcome of the case, but because she had chosen herself. She had chosen the family that had shown up for her when she needed it most. The courtroom was stark, the air thick with tension. Sarah could feel the weight of the room pressing down on her, but there was a surprising lightness in her heart. The fight for her will had become something more than just a legal battle. It had become a battle for her dignity, for her autonomy, and for the family she had chosen. She didn't need to win the inheritance to prove her worth. She already knew who she was now, and that was enough. Leah was by her side, as always, sitting quietly with a gentle but firm presence. Her hand was wrapped around Sarah's, offering a quiet strength that Sarah had come to rely on. As they waited for the judge to enter, Sarah glanced over at her children. Their faces were a mix of anger, frustration, and betrayal, and it made her heart ache in ways she hadn't expected. They had once been her world, and now they were strangers to her, but she was no longer willing to allow their neglect to define her. The judge entered, and everyone stood. The proceedings began, with the lawyer on Sarah's side outlining her wishes and explaining the bond she had formed with Leah. The case had become more about their relationship than the money or the property, and it was clear that Sarah's children had a hard time grasping that. They had expected her to care for them, to always be there for them, but when the roles were reversed, they were nowhere to be found. One by one, her children took the stand, each of them trying to justify their absence. Mike, the eldest, went first. His voice was filled with anger as he accused Sarah of being manipulated by Leah, claiming that she had taken advantage of Sarah's vulnerability. "You can't seriously expect us to just accept this," Mike argued. "We're your children. We've been there for you through everything. How can you just give everything away to a girl who barely knows you?" Sarah sat quietly, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. She didn't want to fight with him anymore. She didn't want to argue. She had already made her decision, and it was time to stand by it. When it was her turn to speak, she stood up slowly, her voice calm but firm. "Mike," she began, her voice carrying across the room, "I have given everything to you. I've always put you first, always sacrificed for you, but you weren't there for me when I needed you the most. You promised you would be, and you weren't." She paused, letting her words sink in. She felt no anger, only the quiet, deep sorrow that came from years of being overlooked, of being the one who always gave but never received. "You see, this isn't about the money or the house. It's about being seen. It's about having someone in my life who cares enough to show up. Leah has done that for me. She's been here for me when none of you were." Her children's faces were a mixture of guilt and frustration. Sarah could see the cracks beginning to show, but there was no going back. She had made her choice, and she had the courage to stand by it. For the first time in years, she felt strong, unshaken. The court session ended, and the judge promised to deliberate and return with a ruling. As Sarah left the room, her heart was heavy but lighter than it had been in years. Leah walked beside her, and for the first time in a long while, Sarah wasn't afraid of what would come next. Weeks passed, and Sarah focused on her healing. The battle had left her exhausted, but it had also left her with a sense of peace. She no longer needed the approval of her children. She had learned that true love and family were not defined by blood, but by the people who show up, the ones who see you, the ones who care for you. Finally, the day of the verdict arrived. Sarah sat in her hospital room, her body frail, but her heart strong. Leah was there, holding her hand, as always. The phone rang, and Sarah's lawyer's name flashed on the screen. Sarah took a deep breath before answering. "Mrs. Johnson," the lawyer said, his voice steady, "the judge has ruled in your favor. Your children's claim has been dismissed, and Leah will inherit everything as you wished." The news hit Sarah like a wave, and she exhaled slowly, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. This wasn't how she had imagined her life would end, but in many ways, it was the beginning of something new. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. As she hung up the phone, Sarah turned to Leah. She had won, but the victory felt bittersweet. She had fought for herself, but in doing so, she had lost so much. The family she had hoped to rebuild would never be the same. Leah smiled, her eyes full of understanding. "We did it, Martha," she whispered. "You did it." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. She had won, but she had also lost. Lost the dream of a perfect family, the dream she had held on to for so long. But she had found something better. She had found love, true love, and that was more than she could have ever hoped for. In the days that followed, Sarah made plans for her future, not in the shadow of her past, but in the light of her new life. She and Leah found a small home outside the city, a place where they could start over, where they could create the family Sarah had always longed for. The house wasn't much, but it was theirs, and that was all that mattered. As Sarah sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset, she felt a quiet peace settle over her. The world felt infinite, full of possibilities. For the first time in her life, she wasn't waiting for someone else's approval. She wasn't trying to fix what was broken. She was living for herself, and it was enough. Leah sat beside her, her presence a quiet strength. "We'll be okay, Martha," she said softly. "Together." And for the first time in a long time, Sarah believed it. They would be okay. The future was theirs to create, and together they would make it something beautiful. If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. I hope it resonated with you and reminded you of the importance of love, care, and the people who truly show up for us when we need them most. If you've ever experienced something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories. And make sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Together, let's continue to support one another through the highs and lows of life. Take care, and remember, you're never alone in your journey.